Good evening, and thank you for joining the Family Support Center of New Jersey's Transition Webinar Series. Tonight's session, titled Social Security Work Incentives, A Blueprint for Success, Part 2. During this evening's presentation, we will allot for time at the end of the presentation for question and answers. We encourage you to type in your questions during the presentation in the space provided. I would like to start by introducing this evening's presenter, Greg Maclee. Greg has served people with disabilities in various capacities since 1986. He is currently the Director of Employment Services for the Family Resource Network, overseeing the New Jersey Work Incentives Network Supports, also known as NJ-WINS, Getting to Work and Wireless Work programs. NJ-WINS assists SSI and Ssdi beneficiaries to utilize available work incentives while attempting to start, continue, or augment work. These work incentives allow a beneficiary to keep his or her benefits for as long as they are needed. Getting to Work provides employment support services to people with any type of disability. Employment support services involve assistance to prepare for, find, and retain employment. In addition, Wireless Work is a new program which assists those with mobility disabilities to establish virtual networks in order to conduct job search, increase skill level, and further careers. Greg has written and won grants with SSA, NJDDS, NJDVRS, and Kessler Foundation to support this program. He continues to write grants for present and future employment and benefits planning related programs. At this time, I would like to introduce Greg. Greg, I'm going to give you control of the screen.
Okay. Okay, so good evening. The last time in part one, we went over a lot of information concerning Social Security, supplemental security income, and Social Security disability insurance. Also, we went over workability Medicaid. We came to a close just before the end of the Social Security disability insurance piece, and I was unable to give you a look at the tracking worksheet and how to use that. So I'm going to be going over that first. So it's going to be kind of a review of the Social Security disability insurance earnings limits. The example that I'm using is a multi-year example. And from year to year, you'll remember the trial work amount figures change and index up with the cost of living, as well as the as well as the all of the other figures that are connected to both of these benefits. So the SGA, the trial work amount, I'll tell you what they are as we go through this particular example. The person we're dealing with here, Mary, started working in a workshop in the year 2000. Now, in the year 2000, that was before the trial work amount was indexing up. It was set at $200 gross earnings each month. So even though she was working in the workshop, there were 2 months out of 6 that she actually surpassed that amount of money. So she accumulated 2 trial work months, even though she worked an entire half a year. In 2001, that trial work amount indexed up to $530. So at that figure, it took her almost the rest of 2001 to accumulate the rest of her 9 trial work months. So for Mary, it took her longer than 9 months to accumulate those 9 trial work months. Keep in mind, you only accumulate a trial work month when you're at or above that trial work amount figure in a given month. Some people go through in 9 straight months. Some people never get through it, and some people anywhere in between. Okay, so Mary, in her case, she took about a year to do this, which means in November of 2001, they would move Mary into an extended period of eligibility. And you remember that most of the terminology that Social Security uses is it contains the definition right in the title. And so extended period of eligibility, that 36 consecutive month time frame that they're going to move Mary into after the completion of her trial work period, is actually extending the life of her check and her Medicare coverage for those 36 months. So during that time frame, they're going to pull out the second measuring stick, which they will call the SGA, Substantial Gainful Activity Figure. And in 2001, that figure stood at $740 gross earnings a month. So she was under those figures, that figure in 2001. In 2002, the figure indexed up to $780 gross earnings a month. And so it took her about a half a year to hit for the first time. She made $800 in June, which means that she was over the SGA figure, and that kicked in her cessation month. They'll call it a cessation month. It's really the first of 3 grace period months. So nothing is ceasing in that month. That's one piece of terminology that's not quite accurate, but it indicates the first of 3 grace period months. They should come in a package of 3, if you remember the last time I mentioned. Now, if they don't come in, if they make a mistake and float that last month, I'm never going to argue about that, and they won't come back and fix that mistake. So it'll only mean that someone will get maybe 1 or 2 grace period months in addition that they shouldn't have gotten. But in this case, they did apply them correctly in a package of 3. So now, after the 3rd grace period month in September, that's the first time Mary is ineligible for a check, but she remains eligible for her Medicare benefit, even though she's not eligible for a check. Now, if she goes back under after this grace period, if she goes back under the SGA figure, which in this year was $780, she will be eligible for that check. So in November, she is eligible for that check again, and then in December she's not. In 2003, the SGA went up to $800, and she was eligible for a handful more of checks, and then no longer after that. She was always over SGA after that point. Now, I guarantee you that I can pretty much guarantee you that all of the months, these blue months that you're seeing, that she shouldn't be eligible for a check, I pretty much guarantee Social Security will send those checks to her anyway, and Mary would have to know which checks she's not eligible for, put them in an interest-bearing account, and wait for Social Security to ask for that money back. Once they ask for that money back, she can keep her interest and everybody's happy. Because sooner or later, Social Security will get around to asking for the money that they sent her that she's not eligible for. So remember, Ssdi is an all-or-nothing benefit. Either you're eligible for the entire check, or you're only eligible for part of the check. I mean, or you're not eligible for any of the checks. Excuse me. So now we did go over impairment-related work expenses and subsidy situations, which would allow Social Security to come up with a countable earnings figure and not have to count the entire gross monthly wages. Remember, for Ssdi, counting a gross month, they count it when the work was done, not when the person is paid. So if the person is looking at a pay stub, you'll be looking at the pay period beginning and ending dates and fitting those into the month. It's the exact opposite for someone on SSI. So now, if this person had, if Mary had out-of-pocket expenses that related to both her disability and to work, they could Social Security would subtract that from what they were counting of her gross monthly wages, and she may be able to extend the life of her check. Subsidy situations that we mentioned the last time, if those were applied, She could maybe even extend the life of her check past this 36-month time frame. Okay, so that is the value of making use of impairment-related work expenses and subsidy situations. Again, my NJ Wins program is able to help individuals with this in person. We can meet with you in person, we can talk with you over the phone, and go through specifically what your benefit situation is. We'll investigate first to see where you're at with your benefit, and then we will write up some reports and go over them with you to detail exactly, where you're starting from and where you're headed to as you're earning. So, and how those earnings are going to affect your benefit, and how many work incentives and which work incentives you can use to extend the life of the benefit for as long as you will need it as you're transferring into work situations. So that is the end of SSDI, just the tail end of it. We will have questions at the end of this presentation, just so you know. For some reason, this is not advancing. Here we go. The next thing I'm going to go over is people will ask me, do I have to pay taxes on my Social Security benefits? And the answer is maybe and maybe not. And the finding out the answer to the question involves a few steps. So step one, you're going to be adding up the following items. Social Security is going to be you'll have to count half of your Social Security benefit, your check for the year, half of that, and in addition to your gross annual wages and all of these other items. These are all considered combined income. Now, that's only step one. And step two, what you're going to do is measure that total against these limits. The first limit is combined income of between $25,000 and $34,000. By the way, if your combined income is below $25,000, you're not paying taxes at all, and just over two-thirds of the people who are on SSDI benefits are not having to pay taxes. So most people on that benefit on benefits are not paying federal taxes. However, if you're making, if the combined income, again, that's basically with half of your SSDI income in addition to wages and any of those other items that you saw on the previous slide, added together. If they are $25,000 between $25,000 and $34,000, you're basically going to be taxed on about half of your benefits. Okay, so half of the half, really. If it's more than $35,000, you're going to be taxed on 85% of that amount. And there's a specific formula that you can go through. I'm not going to go through it now. It's better to get a tax expert that really knows, how to apply these formulas. I would not recommend trying to go through these alone. It's best to get a tax expert that understands how this applies. Now, that's if you're filing a federal tax return as an individual. If you're filing a joint return, the figures jump up to between $32,000 and $44,000. And so if it falls below that, you're still not paying taxes. If it's between that, it's 50%. If it's over that $44,000 figure, you're going to be paying about 85%, or paying on about 85% of your taxable benefit there. If you're married but filing separately, you're going to have to pay taxes for sure. That's the day they're not going to give you any break in a situation like that. Okay, so now in terms of reporting those taxes, or how you're going to find out, what your benefit was for that previous year that you're looking at, The Social Security Administration does send you a report annually. It's called your Social Security Benefit Statement, Form SSA 1099. You can use that when you're filing your taxes. You can, if you're going to be in a situation that where you're going to be paying back, you can either pay back at a quarterly, on a quarterly basis, or you can actually file a form, Form W-4V, that will enable them to withhold your tax payments from your checks before you get it. So if you want that to be automatically done, that's a possibility as well, so you're not having to worry about remembering paying back on a quarterly basis. So that's basically taxes in a quick nutshell. Again, most people that are on benefits are not going to be hitting near that $25,000 or those $32,000 figures in combined income. Keep in mind, you're only counting half of what you're receiving in Social Security benefits, not the entire amount. Okay, so that's how taxes are viewed by Social Security. It's a little bit more detailed when you get right down to reporting them. The next slide I'm going to be talking about is the PABS program. That's Protection and Advocacy for Beneficiaries of Social Security. This particular program is there. It's run by Disability Rights New Jersey. Basically, it helps people who are using a ticket to work, which we're going to go over next, just in case they are having a problem in terms of receiving their ticket, activating their ticket, or if they're having a problem with the employment network that they're assigning the ticket to, or if they're having a problem with the services, Work Incentives Planning and Assistance Services, which is what New Jersey WINS is. So if anyone has a complaint, they can complain to the PABS program, and they're supposed to investigate that. PABS also has other, the Disability Rights New Jersey also has other programs. For instance, they do some investigation of representative payees and whatnot. So their information is available on the Social Security website in addition to ours, and it's also available on the njwins.org website. Now, we're going to go through the ticket to work itself. Now, the first thing I want to tell you about the ticket is it is completely independent of all of the work incentives described in Part 1 and the ones I was describing earlier in this broadcast. So you do not have to use a ticket to work ever. You can shelve it and use it later, or you can use it right away. The idea behind the ticket itself was to level the playing field for employment service providers because they felt like the State of New Jersey Division of Vocational Rehabilitation had an unfair advantage. But the way the ticket services are paid for are back end, so all of the payments come well after the work is done. And so not a lot of employment networks are able to survive very well in that way, and the state BR is actually able to use the ticket or access tickets easier. They're able to use it better because they have other money that they can draw from while they're waiting for the ticket to work money to come back and reimburse them. This is the original ticket to work that they used to actually mail to people. It really didn't have any worth to it. You didn't necessarily have to take this to a provider and to assign your ticket. So it was kind of useless, and they realized that they stopped sending them. You're never going to see a paper ticket to work anymore. Everything is done over the phone, by mail, or electronically now. So there is no physical ticket to work, but this is what it used to look like when the program started. So what does the ticket to work do? I mentioned it's there to pay, have a way to pay for employment support services. and to give you a wide variety of programs to choose from. Now, employment support services, if you need a definition, is simply this: anything that helps you, it helps prepare you for work, helps you to get work, and helps you to retain work or augment work. So all of those, anything that has to do with preparing for work, getting work, retaining work, and even augmenting your work situation and moving on to even a better job, those are things that these employment support services are designed to do. Now, these are some of the categories of things that they're specifically looking to do with you, but if you keep in mind that really all they're talking about is anything that prepares or gets or retains work, you're in good shape. You don't really need to see all of these things, but these are some of the options that they have. Now, using the ticket, again, I said you can use it immediately, or you can just shelve it and use it later, or you don't really have to use it. The state of New Jersey can, for instance, the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation can serve you without using your ticket, but more than likely, if you are an SSI or Ssdi beneficiary, they're probably going to activate your ticket. Now, the state VR can activate your ticket as soon as an individual plan for employment is signed. Once that happens, then they just log into their computer, check off a box, and then that person gets put on a monthly send list to the Maximus organization, which is the ticket manager, and then they assign the ticket to the VR agency. Now, again, you don't have to assign it to the state VR. There are other employment networks, and they are located. They can be found if you go onto the Social Security Ticket to Work website. Now, if you go on the website and you're searching for an employment network, they're going to give you various options. You can click on a state. You can put in a zip code or what have you. And when you do that, a whole listing of employment networks pops up before you. Now, the problem is they're not all going to be in your zip code. They may not all be in your state. There are employment networks that are saying they're serving the state of New Jersey, and they may be in California or Hawaii or New York or wherever. So you have to be careful. They may not be, they may not be actually located in your state. Well, let me say this. Once you decide to use your ticket with a regular employment network, they're going to want to do an individual work plan with you. Now, before they get to that point, they're going to need to call Maximus to see if your ticket is open and ready for use, or if it's already in use with another employment network or VR. If it's already in use, then the ticket holder will need to get it released from the former employment network, and so that it can be freed up and then assigned to the new employment network. So if the ticket has already been in use somewhere else, the person can move that to a ticket holder can move that ticket if they feel they're not getting good service with a particular employment network. They can move it to another employment network or to the VR services. They just need to make sure that they're contacting Maximus and the other provider and saying, look, I want to close my ticket here and move it to a new provider. So you're not locked into an employment network once you assign that ticket. You can sever that relationship anytime as a ticket holder. Now, the same holds true for someone who, for the actual employment network or VR. They can sever the relationship as well. So it's kind of a, everyone has an option that if they see the working relationship between the employment network, whatever it is, and the ticket holder is not working out. Either the ticket holder sees that or the employment network sees that, both parties have the option of terminating services and moving on. The ticket holder will have an option of moving that ticket to another service of his or her choosing. But they all have to start with a work plan. If you're going to any employment network other than the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation, you're going to need to start. That plan is going to need to be developed and sent off to Maximus, and they're going to have to approve it, and then the ticket is assigned, and that's kind of a time. Sometimes it takes a while for that to happen. Okay. Now, why would I use a ticket? Well, the only reason, for a couple of reasons. One is if you have a particular employment network you'd like to work with, you're free to choose that employment network. Now, the employment network will ask you some questions and decide whether they are the right employment network for you. So they don't have to accept your ticket, even though you're going to them to ask for employment services. They can refuse on the basis that they're not the type of service you need. Not all employment networks provide all types of services. For instance, VR, they can provide all kinds of services. They can buy equipment for people that they need for work. They can pay for schooling, college courses. They can give someone up to $10,000 in startup costs for someone who wants to go into his or her own business. Those are things that most employment networks are not able to do. So if the employment network may only prepare you for work. Maybe they don't do the other two pieces. Some employment networks may only find you a job. They may not have a job preparation program. So you're going to have to, a ticket holder would have to do their best to interview the employment network as well and find out what it is they're offering to see if that's the kind of service that they need and if it's enough service for them. So you can't assume they're not all the same. Not all employment networks are going to be able to serve you as comprehensively. So some of them can only do one piece and then they're done. So you're going to have to be careful. The most comprehensive services is actually the state of New Jersey. So even though they were trying to level the playing field, they're still really the best place to go if you want to get employment services of some kind. Okay. Now, if you do put your ticket in use with an employment network, you are protected from continuing disability reviews. Now, I mentioned this in my first training. Continuing disability reviews, quite simply, are reviews, medical reviews that Social Security will come and do for SSI and SSDI beneficiaries alike. And what they're doing at that time is making sure that the person is unable to work at substantial gainful activity and not that they're just trying to stay under that substantial gainful activity figure just to keep their check and their medical coverage. So they're going to come back and revisit that every 3 to 5 or 5 to 7 years, depending upon the severity of your disability. Everyone goes through those reviews. The only way you don't go through those reviews is by putting your ticket to work into use. Now, even though you're not going to, you'll be protected from those large continuing disability reviews. By the way, a continuing disability review that does not go favorably means you're going to lose your entire benefit, both your check and your medical coverage. So it's a possibility. So if people don't want to be worrying about that, it is to their advantage to use the ticket. Now, the catch is you're going to have to be making timely progress towards an employment goal. Okay? So even though you're not getting a continuing disability review, you'll be getting what is known as timely progress reviews. And timely progress reviews are basically a one-sheet checkoff list. And they should be doing them every year. And they rarely do them every year in the real world. So they may not send one until year 5 of your ticket use. But they're supposed to be sending those maximums. They're supposed to be sending those every year. And they should have check-off boxes. And those check-off boxes kind of reflect what the progress is from year to year. So they're not going to be the same. The first year might be, are you going to school so that you can get work later? Are you working part-time, or are you making whatever the trial work amount is? This year it's $770. So this year the first one would mention that figure. Are you making that or more? Now, if you cannot check off those boxes, you have to check off one. If you can't check off at least one box, you're considered not making timely progress. And if that's the case, they're going to stop your ticket use right there and do an immediate continuing disability review. Now, that doesn't mean that your benefit is necessarily going to stop, but it means there's a chance it could if they do run an unfavorable continuing disability review and your doctor is not cooperating or whatever, and they decide you're no longer disabled according to their definition. Again, if they make a decision like that, what they are not saying is that you're no longer disabled. What they are saying is you're no longer disabled according to their definition, okay, which, keep in mind, is you must be unable to make SGA for 12 months or longer. For SSI people, they're going to be using the Blue Book half of the Social Security definition and looking at that specifically because, of course, as an SSI recipient, I can earn much more than SGA and still be entitled to a portion of my check because that's a needs-based benefit. So they're going to be doing a strictly medical Blue Book determination on that if they're doing a continuing disability review. Now, I mentioned you can, your ticket can stay with someone until you get a job and you have satisfied services, and you can withdraw at any time. Either you're unhappy with the service or you feel that you don't need the service anymore. Okay. Now you have to keep in mind an employment network does not get paid until you are reaching some of the milestone in terms of earnings, the earnings milestone, and I'll show you them to you in a minute. So we've already talked about the employment networks not having to accept your ticket or a ticket holder being able to move their ticket from one to another. They also, an employment network and a ticket holder also have an option of sharing a ticket, but their definition of sharing a ticket, by them I mean Social Security, Social Security's definition of sharing a ticket is not quite the same as mine, I think. Sharing a ticket in terms of Social Security's definition is that it cannot be that you're working with two employment networks simultaneously. That's not what they mean by sharing a ticket. What they mean by sharing a ticket is one employment network works with you and then does what they need to do. Say they're doing job prep with you, and then they're going to, that particular employment network will be done, and then the ticket would be moved to another employment network. So that sounds a lot like, and there might be a cooperative agreement there. Maybe they had a memorandum of understanding between employment networks saying, look, we'll take care of the job prep services if you take care of the job placement part of it. And so they agree that they're going to transfer a ticket from one to the other once those services are rendered. But they don't mean that you can be working, a ticket holder cannot be working with two employment networks simultaneously. That's not what share means. Okay. Let's see. So I already talked about stuff on this side. Now, the one thing that I wanted to make sure everyone knew is that an employment network will never get paid unless the individual ticket holder has found a job where he's making the trial work amount or more, whatever it is in a given year. In 2014, it's 770, as I mentioned. If they're working part-time and they're only making $500 gross earnings, that employment network never gets paid. So the likelihood of an employment network looking at a ticket holder and assessing whether they think they can get a person a job making that or more is pretty good. So if they don't think they're going to be able to do that, they're probably not going to accept the ticket. So that limits, the freedom of the ticket holder to assign that ticket wherever. Now, this, I don't know if you can see this well. This is actually the timely progress guidelines. And I wanted to show you this because, and I even have to put my glasses on to see this. I wanted to show you this because these are actually the checkoff boxes are going to reflect each of these. So the checkoff box may say, did you complete 3 months of your trial work level earnings? So that's 770. If you've earned 3 months, if you worked for 3 months and earned 770 or more, then you have satisfied that checkoff box and you can check that off. Did you complete 60% of full-time course load at a college? Yes, then check that off. So you don't necessarily in year one have to actually be working in order to make timely progress. Keep in mind, if you're only doing that, your employment network is not going to be paid. Your employment network will not get paid until you're actually working at least trial work level. Now, if you go down to the third year, that's the first year that they're going to ask you, are you working and making substantial gainful activity, which is 1070 gross a month this calendar year. Okay, so and if you're not, you're not going to continue to make timely progress in the third year. So this is I'm trying to show you this so that you know that using your ticket almost guarantees that you're going to be coming off your benefits, especially for an Ssdi individual. If an Ssdi individual is making substantial gainful activity genuinely without any impairment-related work expenses and whatnot, they're going to be coming off of their check receipt very soon. So using your ticket is kind of committing to moving off of your benefit at some point. Now, of course, you can use it. You can get halfway through and then stop using it. The only thing that's going to happen is they're going to do a continuing disability review just to make sure that you continue to be disabled according to their definition. So if you can use a ticket for quite a long time. You can use that for basically that 7-year plus period. As long as you're making the progress that you can see in each of these designated dots here, you are deemed to make timely progress. And as long as you're making this progress, your employment network also is going to be getting paid. And that's pretty much the end of the ticket to work discussion. What I would say about this is if you're working with one of our community work incentive coordinators in the New Jersey WINS program, we're going to help you in terms of when you get these timely progress reviews, and if you can't check something off, we're going to help you to try to find workarounds so that you can keep your ticket active. We're also going to advise you when you send your timely progress reviews in to send them certified mail. You're going to be sending them to Maximus, so you can't just walk them into a Maximus office. They don't have them here. But you want to have proof that you sent them, because frequently people have sent their timely progress review sheets in, and Maximus will say, we never saw that, and then bang, Social Security is doing a continuing disability review on them right away. So you really need, whenever you're dealing with Social Security or whenever you're dealing with Maximus, the ticket to work manager, you need to have proof that you've done the proper reporting. And in this case, when you're mailing it off, you're going to need to send this certified mail so that you can prove that you sent the form back properly to the Maximus agency, so that they do not do an immediate continuing disability review. Okay? So that's basically all of the slides I have for today, and what we can do is start to take some questions. If when you do ask your question, when you type your question in, if you're talking about SSI, please say SSI. If you're talking about, if you have a question about SSDI, please say SSDI. Don't just abbreviate Social Security, because I won't know which benefit we're talking about. Okay? So please be as specific as you can when you're asking your question.
Thanks so much, Greg. Give me just 1 second. We do have questions coming in. Okay, Greg, the first question I have is regarding the employment network. What if no one is willing to accept someone's ticket, if that network doesn't feel that that person is employable?
Are they able to? Is the question, or if you're asking, is it right that they can refuse your ticket? Yeah. I mean, it's really going to be up to them when they interview you to screen you whether you're appropriate for their program. So if they don't feel that they're going to be, and again, if they don't feel that they're going to be able to get you a job making $770 or more in this particular year each month, they're probably not going to accept your ticket. They do want, and it's reasonable, because they do want to get paid for the service they're rendering.
And Greg, just to add on to that, can you give the attendees some suggestions of other routes that they can go if their ticket is not accepted by anyone?
Say that one more time.
Sure. Can you give any suggestions to the attendees if their ticket is not accepted by anyone? Where else can they explore for other employment options?
Well, I think if the ticket, if they have not tried to take their ticket to the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation, then I think they haven't tried enough with their ticket. So I would try that option before I exhausted trying to assign my ticket. That you can get employment services through the State Division of Vocational Rehabilitation, even if you don't have a ticket. They are the most comprehensive in terms of evaluations. They can send you for evaluations. They can do a whole lot of things. They can even send people for, they can even pay for operations that someone might need that would make them work ready. So they are the most comprehensive by far. But also the Division of Disability Services can provide employment services, employment service providers. So you can, there are other fee-for-service programs. There might be some customized employment type programs where people are actually paying a particular provider to work with their son or daughter. And so those options don't necessarily involve ticket assignments. So I would say employment networks themselves, you probably have to be, pretty sure that you're going to be able to make $770 or more, and then eventually $1070 or more before you use a regular employment network. But VR is not that way. They work with a lot of people who are more challenged, and they will assign a client that they're working with to an appropriate service like the ARC of New Jersey, or the Easter Seals, or some other collaborative support programs of New Jersey. These are all providers that they could use and send you to, and these providers work with people that have challenging disabilities. So the employment networks themselves, maybe not, but definitely I would go, the first stop I would make, whether or not I wanted to assign my ticket, would be to the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation, and then also DD services.
Great, thanks so much. The next question is, where can my son get job prep services? He gets Ssdi and his ticket to work is with DVRS.
Okay, so he's getting job prep services with the Division of Voc Rehab. At the moment, if he's a client of theirs, he's getting services there. Now, the thing to remember with any provider, especially with the Division of Voc Rehab, is that it's best for you to prepare your son or daughter, or your son or daughter to prepare themselves as best they can. They may, they have a lot of people they're working with, they have a lot of paperwork, and they're not necessarily going to be necessarily go in the direction that your son or daughter wants to go unless they see the initiative being taken by your son or daughter. So, for instance, if your son or daughter has a desire to do a certain type of work, what they might do before meeting with a division counselor is to research that online, find out where those particular positions are being, what companies are hiring for those positions, or if they're wanting to go to school to be trained in a certain task in a certain field, they should do that research before meeting with their counselor so that they can drive that relationship as much as they can. The more input that a client of VR gives, the better chance they have of reaching the goal they desire. So you can't just go in there passively and say, here I am, can you help me just figure out what it is I can do? If you do that, you're liable to not get as far as you would like to get. You might be sent on interviews for jobs that you really don't want because they're not going to necessarily know you well enough to know what it is you can do, what your aptitude is, what your education is, and what your innate talents are. So if you really want the best out of any employment service, and particularly with VR, if you do some of the work, if you do your homework before you meet with that particular counselor, you're going to be able to drive that relationship and they're going to be able to help you to get to the job that you want to get to, because you're going to be providing information for them that they're going to need in order to make those decisions. You're going to kind of have to prove your case. So if you say, look, I want to be a dog groomer, and the counselor might not be real ready to do that for you unless you can say, look, I know that there are several openings right in my county that are not that far away from where I live. I know that there's a school A over here that actually trains people to do this, and I know that their requirements are that I have a high school diploma and I have a high school diploma. So you're detailing for that counselor, a couple of things. You're telling them that you're motivated, and you're also doing some of the work for them so that they can actually pick that up and get you where you're going. Again, if you don't do that and you leave all of that work to them, they have a lot of people that they're dealing with and a lot of work to do, and the chances of them being able to spend a lot of time finding that information out for you, that's not really necessarily going to happen. So again, it's helpful, it's better if you can do some of the prep work before you begin your relationship with your counselor.
Great, thanks so much. And we have one more question. Are there any age restrictions on a Ticket to Work program?
Yeah, there is. You have to be basically working age 14 through 64. Okay, so basically, the same age you have to be working. So before retirement age and old enough to be able to get a job legally. And that's it. That's a pretty wide swath, a pretty large group of people.
And Greg, just for my own knowledge, is it common to see someone below the age of 18 taking advantage of this program?
Say that one more time.
Is it common to see someone below the age of 18 using this program?
Oh yeah, yeah. There are, most of those people are probably going to be SSI recipients, and there are great work incentives that can allow them to get a job and really not have to have any of their earnings affect their check at all. They can get their entire SSI check and their work check combined, and they'll be in a good situation. So yeah, I mean, you can be in high school. Now, VR will want you to be graduating from high school before they're really going to do a whole lot for you, but maybe another employment network might not require that. But I have, worked with people that are, 16, 17, 18 years old. You do not have to be a high school graduate or anything. So anyone from literally from age 14 up can take advantage of ticket services.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Greg. And that concludes the questions that we've gotten so far. If we do get additional questions, we'll definitely forward them to you. At this time, on behalf of the Family Support Center of New Jersey and the Family Resource Network, we would like to thank you for joining us this evening. We definitely encourage you to explore additional resources and upcoming trainings and webinars that we offer on transitionmattersnj.org. And we also invite you to listen to any of the archived recordings of the webinars that we have done in the past, including this one that will be archived on the Family Support Center of New Jersey website. That's fscnj.org. And lastly, we invite you to participate in a brief 3-question survey following this session in order to help us serve your needs for the future. So Greg, thank you very much for joining us, and we look forward to seeing everyone on the next webinar. Thank you.